The women's NCAA tournament bracket, it is set, so we're going to take a look at the field with a contributor to ESPN. One of the best voices covering women's hoops, my good friend Maria Marino, joins me now. Maria, how are you doing on this Selection Sunday?
Oh, it's a wild selection Sunday, but I couldn't be more fired up for this tournament.
There we go. I'm ready to go. This is one of my favorite times of year, March Madness, and I love the women's tournament because you never know what is going to happen at all. So when you look at this bracket, Maria, and how it came together, what was your biggest surprise here on Selection Sunday?
I have to say, seeing Notre Dame as a three seed, just seeing that number three next to their name, even though I knew coming into this that they had lost three of their last five games, just again, that number three, I was just like, wow, it didn't register, it didn't hit me until the moment. And I understand why. I really do, because the losses that they had recently include those to NC State and then also Duke in the ACC tournament final. And those two teams both ended up as two seeds. So therefore, it does make sense that they're a three, but I just still think they're a very scary three seed. I mean, this was a team that at one point was ranked number one in the nation. I mean, their backcourt are studs, Hannah Hidalgo and Olivia Miles. If they get their swagger back, I do not want to face them. I love Sonia Citron. I think she's WNBA ready. So uh, I feel like they could be potentially upsetting some folks.
Yeah, I think they can because of the talent on that team, as you mentioned. Hannah Hidalgo, Olivia Miles, Sonia Cintron, all three look like they are headed to the W, so they are a dangerous, dangerous three seed. But I can't say they weren't deserving of it here in terms of the seeding. Now, we always like to look when it comes to tournament and Selection Sunday, we like to look at the teams on the bubble. What were
Yeah.
your biggest takeaways from the teams who were on the bubble this year, including teams who made it or didn't make it?
So in my opinion, this is a huge storyline, especially for us and where we are in the Northeast. But I wanted to see, would the Ivy be a three bid league? I have been preaching this for weeks. I felt that they should be, and in fact, they are a three bid league. So this is really, really exciting. We had three sensational mid-major programs in this conference between Harvard, Princeton, and Columbia. And Harvard just put on a show this weekend and they upset Columbia in the final. Harmony Turner was an absolute wrecking ball in that tournament. I'm so excited to see Harvard go up against Michigan State in the first round. You know, Turner versus a Big Ten opponent. What can she do? But then I also felt that if you looked at how these teams played each other throughout the year, they were all very close teams. They all had, great resumes. And so I'm really happy to see that both Columbia and Princeton were awarded with at-large bids. This is only the third time that we've seen the Ivy have an at-large bid. They did have one last year with Columbia, who fell to Vanderbilt in the first four, and then Princeton back in 2016. But looking at the first four matchups, which both Princeton and Columbia have to play, Princeton is going to get to play Iowa State. If you recall last year, they had a nice showing in the tournament. Audi Crooks kind of broke out as a star. She's a very unique player. Against that Princeton defense that has a lot of size, I'm just very excited to see that unfold. And I just think it's remarkable that we get three out of eight teams in the Ivy making the tournament.
Yeah, it's huge for the Ivy League, and I wonder if one of these teams can show out, make a nice run here in the tournament. That would be good for the Ivy as they get three schools here into the field of 68. Now, speaking of making history, UCLA, for the first time in their program history, they get the number one overall seed, Maria. They are in Regional 1 out in Spokane. Do they have the easiest path to the Final Four of all the number one seeds in this tournament?
I think so, and that's really how it should be, right? If you're the number one overall seed, theoretically, again, this is all theory. We've seen crazy things happen. Certainly, that's why we call it March Madness. But just looking at some of the other opponents, like I look at LSU for sure as a scary proposition. That would be a rematch from the Sweet 16 last year, which LSU won. But LSU, I have concerns about their health. Flau'jae Johnson has been out for a few weeks. She's supposed to be back for the tournament, but how is she going to look? I think she will have some time to kind of reestablish, get used to, getting back into it. And then Anissa Morrow has been a little banged up. So there's some question marks there. Definitely, I think they're the team to watch. And then NC State, I mean, they made the Final Four last year, so that's no small feat. But I do think that when I look at the four regions, the third and fourth overall seeds, so Southern Cal and Texas, to me, definitely it's reflected in the competition of their regional brackets, where I do think they have tougher roads than the first and second overall seeds.
And we'll see what UCLA is able to do. First time they're the number one overall seed, as I mentioned, in their program's history. Now, the regional that I'm really excited about is Regional 4. Okay, we've got USC. We saw them edge out UConn for the number one seed in that region. Were the Trojans deserving of their seed? Because, UConn fans are not going to be too happy about this. And how much do we need to see? I feel like we need to see this. A USC versus UConn rematch in the regional final. I know I want to see it. What about you, Maria?
Oh, I absolutely love this. And I know some people are maybe a little bit disappointed that we're going to get, well, not that we're going to get, but that we could get this rematch prior to the Final Four, because obviously Juju Watkins and Paige Beckers are two of the biggest stars in the game. So people want to see that, potentially in the Final Four, but I actually don't mind. I don't mind if they meet, prior to the Final Four, because first of all, we saw that happen last year and the audience was great. The game was great. Not to mention, if you recall last year, it was a storyline how Iowa and LSU could potentially rematch, and they did in the Elite Eight. And guess what? At the time, it was the most watched game and it was still compelling. I think that the women's game is at a point now where we don't necessarily need to guarantee that certain stars, you know, see each other at the pinnacle of the tournament. I think it's going to attract a ton of attention and just excitement regardless. So I love that we get this potential, once again, potential for a rematch if the sort of chalk holds. But let's just remember, so flashback to last year, UConn did beat USC
Yep.
and it was a good game. And then this regular season, these two teams met back in December. USC, an impressive win on the road, beat UConn by 2. So to me, if I'm USC, I don't love that I have UConn in my bracket. I mean, I'm sure they're extremely confident and they should be. They have probably the player of the year in Juju. And what I think is so remarkable about Juju is, I mean, she's only 19 years old. Like, I can't wrap my head around the fact that, we talk about her, we compare her to all of the best players, and she's so young. And from the beginning of the season to now, I have seen just massive improvement by her. So I think that's something, to consider. Whereas Paige Beckers is older, she's more experienced, she's been to 3 Final Fours. And so I do worry for USC in the sense that I just think that that experience factor, could come into play. But this is what we want.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, look, all respect to all the other teams in the bracket, but we want to see this rematch because remember too, in the game that USC edged UConn, again, talking about maturity, if you recall, there was I believe it was Juju fouled Sarah Strong,
Yeah.
and gave Sarah Strong an opportunity to win it at the free throw line. As a freshman, Strong ends up missing a couple, but those are like the little mistakes that I think Juju now is past because she has matured. So this will be spicy. Like, we need it. We need it.
We absolutely need this game. If you don't want to see this game, you're not a basketball fan. We need Juju
Yeah.
versus Paige, USC versus UConn rematch. It's going to be good. Must see TV. But like Maria said, folks, we're not saying it's going to happen. We hope it happens.
Yeah.
Just got to get there. A couple of wins for both teams, and we could be there. In Regional 2, we saw South Carolina. They barely celebrated the announcement that they earned their number one seed, because the 2 seed, excuse me, because it was not the top overall seed. They got the number one seed in the region, but they didn't get the top overall seed. And so they didn't have much of a celebration here, Maria. When you look at this with the Gamecocks, do they have a chip on their shoulder heading into this tournament? And do you look at them? I know it's crazy to say for a one seed, but are
Yeah.
they real dangerous here?
Well, first of all, they're very dangerous. I highly, highly expect them to be in the Final Four and have as good a shot as anyone to win back-to-back championships. I thought this was so interesting on the selection show. um, Dawn Staley was speaking with Holly Rowe, and she asked her about the fact that they were not the number one overall seed. And now Dawn definitely was like, we don't need a chip on our shoulder. We don't need any extra motivation. But she clearly felt that they deserved to be the number one overall seed. Now, when they asked the committee about this, on the show, they talked about the two key factors as to why. And one was, look, UCLA beat South Carolina in the head to head. Okay, so that's plain and simple. And then they looked at margin of victory, or what they call bad losses. And a bad loss that South Carolina had on their resume was against UConn. And when I say a bad loss, it's certainly no, disrespect, or it's not, a problem necessarily. Like it's not embarrassing to lose to UConn. It was the fashion in which they lost. They got smoked by UConn, and I do see how that could be. It's kind of a little bit unfair, maybe, that it's held against them because the point of the season that they play in February in the middle of the conference schedule. So it's a risk, but they were at home. They did get beat badly, but I also think I think sometimes you need a bad loss
Mm.
throughout the season so that you learn from that, and that does kind of fuel you moving forward. So I just think it's funny that Don's like, we're not going to play with a chip on our shoulder, but like clearly, like, you feel a way about it, Don. Like you
Yeah.
obviously, and I understand that. Again, 16-3 in quad one games. They obviously play a really tough schedule, but UCLA, the only team they lost to was USC. So it's debatable. But I do think both of those teams, even though one versus two, I still do think that they both have everything right in front of them and the advantages of their seating position, and they'll be just fine.
Yeah, I think they'll be fine. Motivation or not, we know how good South Carolina is, and Dawn Staley will have her ladies ready to go come tournament time. So you talked about Notre Dame getting a three seed in Regional 3 in Birmingham, where Texas, they got the top seed. In that regional, who do you like to come out of that regional? Because Notre Dame's dangerous. We know
Yeah.
Texas is a really good team. Who do you like coming out of that regional?
Yeah, so this is one that I think is more on the open side of things. And part of it is that Texas just looked, again, they played South Carolina, okay, in the SEC tournament final. They looked pedestrian against South Carolina. And again, that's South Carolina being the juggernaut that it is. But I expected a little bit more. I mean, look, they took one from South Carolina earlier in the year as well. So it's not like they're not capable. Madison Booker definitely struggled in that game. So basically Texas has to learn from that. And again, as I said prior, I think when you have a rough loss, it opens your eyes to some things, maybe a wake-up call. I think teams have trouble when they get complacent, when they coast. I don't, those aren't the teams that I fear as much, right? I kind of fear the teams that did lose something along the way and do have something to prove. But that also brings me back to Notre Dame, where I think they're really scary. How about TCU?
Mm.
They have a player in Sedona Prince who, from a matchup standpoint, at 6'7", is very difficult. They have Haley Van Lith, who also has Final Four experience and also is an older player that's very mature, has been in the big moments, has made the big plays. So that's interesting. I'm looking at, I think the Louisville Nebraska matchup could be really interesting. But I guess if you're asking me flat out who comes out of it, those are where I'm wondering, like, does Notre Dame does Notre Dame figure it out and get back to that scary, dangerous form? I could see them coming out of that region.
All right, Notre Dame, we keep saying it. They might be the team to watch in Regional 3 down in Birmingham. We'll see if they're able to come out of it. Last thing for me here, Maria, you know what time it is. It's prediction time. I am not
Oh
sure at
man.
all. I don't know if we had time to dive into your bracket. Some people dive in quickly, but who do you like to win it all and win the women's NCAA tournament this year? Who do you have winning the whole thing?
So this is obviously very tough because like if all the chalk stands, right, you have teams that are going to be facing each other for a fourth time. So you're talking UCLA USC rematch, South Carolina Texas rematch. Like that's a little crazy. I I'm gonna beat around the bush. I'm not gonna lie. I am scared of South Carolina. I think that they are just the team that, nobody wants to face, and it's because of their depth. Some of their best players come off the bench, right? I am intrigued by UConn because I do think they have a real opportunity against USC. And once again, I'm going to lean on the experience factor. As great as Juju Watkins is, she just doesn't have the same amount of experience. She doesn't have the years playing and watching basketball that somebody like Paige Beckers does. So it's hard to ignore sort of the storybook factor of like, can Paige finally get it? Can she, as one of the biggest stars, hyped coming in, like, can she finally get that sort of storybook ending? Man, it's really hard.
Come on,
I'll just
give me a
say
pick, Maria. Come on.
I'll just say UConn. I feel like you can't
Okay.
go wrong saying UConn, but I just think that this is everyone's been saying it, it's cliche. It's definitely one of the more wide open. This is not like last year where I felt like South Carolina was destined.
Yeah.
UCLA too, they have the universal mismatch in Lauren Betts, but they've also shown that they are beatable. So, yeah, but I'll say UConn, whatever. Whatever.
So
Call me a home.
I like it. No, no, no. I like the pick. I like the pick, and I haven't filled in my bracket yet, but I'm rolling with the same pick of UConn because I just think they're going to get this done for Paige. Maybe I want that deep down inside. Maybe the
Yeah.
journalist in me wants that
Yeah.
to be the good story, but
Yeah.
I don't think they're a bad pick. South Carolina scares me though. I do think they have a chip in their shoulder. They are really deep, like you said, and
Yeah.
they can be scary. The other scary part I'll mention before we get out of here is Juju's scary too because if she starts figuring things out and the team starts riding her, sometimes in a tournament all you can need is one really great player, which she is, and she
Yeah.
gets hot, and the rest could be history. So you never know. I like your pick. We got you to make a pick, Maria. That is great. That is Maria Marino. Check her out. She's a great contributor for women's basketball with ESPN. Maria, I appreciate the breakdown. I appreciate you making the picks. Enjoy the tournament.
You got it. You too.